Hey, uh, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I hope you're not meeting us in the middle of the night, but good night if you're up late. I'm absolutely so delighted. Oh, hello. I'm so delighted and so honored to have an excuse to come back and learn with you all again. If you joined us last week, and it's completely fine if you didn't join us last week, but if you joined us last week, we took a look at really the basics of HTML. And I'm going to put this out sort of to the digital class. If you all were talking to someone who had never heard of HTML before, how might you describe that? If you were talking to a stranger or a friend and somebody was like, well, what is HTML? I want to hear your descriptions of what HTML is. And there's no wrong answers. Nobody is going to make fun of you. Nothing bad's going to happen. Oh, Timothy, hey, if you missed the first session last week, that's completely fine. I'd recommend, so you want to be logged into FreeCodeCamp anyway. But go ahead and get caught up. So do about half of that, and you're going to be just fine. If you're watching on YouTube, Timothy, you can go back and our past lessons are there if you want to go ahead and take a look at what we did last week. But if you don't need them, there's no reason to go back and watch them. We only did a little bit. I promise you can get caught up. Everything's fine. We're moving nice and slow and chill. So again, to the class. How might you describe HTML to somebody who's never heard of it? I'm going to have a little sip of coffee because it's very early here. That's a lie. It's 9 in the morning here. I'm just very lazy, I confess. Good morning, egg roll. How might you describe HTML? And we won't put these on the screen, so don't worry, you don't have to feel self-conscious. How might you describe HTML to someone who had never heard of it? Oh, Kai, I just said I wasn't going to put this on the screen. Do you mind if I put this on the screen? Because this is such a good answer. We've got someone saying, hey, do you know what? HTML is a way of explaining, telling our browser about the content we want on our web page. It's not just what you see, it's also the semantic structure, how we organize that content. You're such a sweetheart for letting me brag on you. This is absolutely correct. So, HTML is hypertext markup language, and it's the language we use when we say, hey, the browser. And here, when we say the browser, we mean our user's browser. Hey, user's browser. Here's what I want you to show my user. Oh, here is what I want you to tell my user. We've got other folks saying, hey, HTML is the basic structure, the skeleton of web pages, and that's super useful. A little bit more, it's the content as well. I love this. We've got someone saying, you know what? It's the language your computer speaks to your server. And then your server uses that to load the visual request to your browser. You are getting way, way ahead of us. And I love this. So we've got a lot of things going on in this incredibly accurate comment. So HTML, it's a markup language that you're sending to a server. You say, hey, I'm going to write HTML, and then I'm going to put this HTML file on a server. And then later on, when people want to see the website that this HTML makes up, the server is going to serve it. I like to think of a server as a waiter or a waitress. I say, oh, your user wants this website. Here you are. It's so perfect. So, how are we feeling today? We want to go ahead and get started? I'm going to cheat. I just confess the worst parts of myself to y'all, where I'm like, oh, I'm a liar and I'm mean. I'm also a little bit of a cheater, and I'm going to send us back in time. If you remember correctly, this is the last thing we studied last week. So it's like, Jess, are you making me? Not making you. You're adults. I can't make you do anything. But I just want to review and talk a little bit about links again. So we learned that a link is, and it's not just, we're going to get to that, but an external link is when you've got, ooh, where am I? When you've got one website, your web page, your HTML file that wants to link to another one somewhere on the web. And what you do is you get an anchor and you throw it with ref. So the anchor tag is an A, and href is really a hypertext reference, but I remember it as the sound of extreme effort when you throw that anchor. at another page, and then you get that link linking the two websites. Everything's chill. Let's go ahead and review what that felt like. So we have our cute orange kitten. We've got our kitty Ipsum, our placeholder text. And here it's telling us we use an anchor element to link to contents outside your web page. An anchor element needs a destination web address called a href. Or, normal adults are going to call it an href. I'm going to get y'all in trouble talking to adults if you're like, oh, yes, href it. That's just a weird Jessism. You shouldn't need that. But what we're going to do is we're going to come down and say, we want to add a link to our website. And the cool thing, if we remember, we did this last week. I'm sending you back in time. That feels mean. But it didn't tell us where. So I'm going to put it up here. We've got our opening tag and an A. And I'm so sorry. I'm still using the loudest keyboard in the world. I could lie to y'all and say, oh, I'm using this loud keyboard so you know that I'm typing and you know what I'm using a loud keyboard, I confess, because I like it. And there's the closing tag, or there's the closing bracket, but we're also going to need a closing tag. So we learned that some HTML elements, or some HTML tags really, are self-closing, like the image one we learned. But that's not how an anchor tag works. So the anchor tag, the hypertext reference, is pointed at. And I've told you to think of anchor as an anchor and throwing it and it makes a chain, but it's also a little bit like an arrow. So when you see a link on a page, Sachin, this is perfect. Do you know what? I'm going to steal this and I'm going to try and be so careful to cite you. Be like, oh gosh, Sachin. Hey, refer me there is absolutely it. It's an arrow or a pointer that says, hey, put me over there. I want to be over there. So, hey, refer me there is the most eloquent possible way. So we're coming down. We learned that as programmers, because you all are, you're web developers now, aren't you? If you've written any HTML or any CSS, I officially, so much that I can officially do anything, dine you. I officially knight you. I officially appoint you. Web developers, if you're writing in web languages. We learned that developers love to delete stuff and that we love to copy and paste. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Ooh. So we saw our display, we saw it jump, but it's not showing us our link, is it? I'm going to go ahead and have a very slow sip of coffee. And while I do that, I'm going to wait for one of you, because I'm lazy, I'm going to wait for one of you to tell me why I don't see anything changed in our display. Where's my link? What have I done wrong? I know you're going to get this. I'm so chill about this. Yeah. Why isn't this working? Aside from Jess messed it up. It's got to be a little bit more specific than that. Beautiful. There's nothing inside these A tags. There's not this opening tag ends here and this closing tag starts and ends here and there's nothing in there. And do you know what? The text, and it doesn't have to be text. We'll learn about that in a second. But when it is text inside a link, it's called anchor text. And we got told, the first thing we got told is, hey, because I like to imagine a very casual conversation with FreeCodeCamp. FreeCodeCamp is like, hey, y'all, where the first thing I want to tell you is our anchor text should say cat photos. You all, look at that, anchor text is missing. You all are absolute sweethearts for saving me from myself. Cat photos. And do you know what? There, it immediately showed up there. If we click this link, it's gonna show us. It's gonna take us. It's going to point us at this other. Oh. You know what? You all came to learn HTML, not listen to me go about kitten photos. And because I'm using, so I'm intentionally using a incognito browser. And you want to be careful with those because you think, oh, an incognito browser, that means everything I'm doing is super secret. It depends on the browser and it depends on your connection. But because it's easier for StreamYard, the software I'm using to broadcast, to share screens for Chrome, I confess I'm using Chrome as a browser this time. There's nothing wrong with Chrome. I tend to be sort of a Firefox daily driver. Um, and the incognito browser in Chrome doesn't keep all your stuff secret. It just keeps it sort of a little more secret from folks using the same computer. And I'm using it here just so that it will continue to wipe. It's going to continue to erase my progress. And you say, Jess, it's weird. Why are you doing this work if it's going to erase your progress? I'm doing this work and letting it erase my progress because I'm going to come back tomorrow and do it again. I don't want tomorrow's learners to see all the stuff already done. So instead of telling us we're like 40%, it's going to say we're like 2% done. I just want to go ahead and prepare you for disappointment. Not like the 2020s haven't been disappointing already. So when we run these tests, it says we're 4% complete. We know deep in our hearts and meaningfully in our souls. Actually, those of you who are following along in real time, how far are you along? How far would we be along if I wasn't in an incognito browser? So, and this is 40, we'd be almost halfway done. Oh, and this is a really good lesson. Don't use an incognito browser. We're about halfway done with HTML. Nice. Don't use an incognito browser with, oh God, some of y'all are getting way ahead. Look at you. 79%. Delightful. So this is, but you don't have to strictly follow the schedule. So if you're a little bit less than 50, and if you're like 1 or 2, if you're 4% like me, that's super chill too. There's lots of space to catch up. And the whole point behind this bootcamp is we're not taking attendance. Nobody's going to come and yell at you. It's helpful to follow along. So there's a lot of sort of research around learner motivation that says, oh, having a schedule can be really useful for keeping yourself on track. But nobody's going to be mad if you're not. So we have learned about external links. I've got a web page here, and I want to link to a web page here with a link. I'm going to point to that, or I'm going to throw an arrow. But what if I want to use a link to jump somewhere else on the same page? We can do that, right? And looking at this, link to internal sections of a page with anchor. I think this is expressly telling us we can do that. Everything is chill. Everything's going to be okay. So an anchory element can be used to create internal links that jump to different sections on the same web page. So here, it's going to be the same cat photo app page, but really, it's going to be the same HTML file. So this kind of HTML file we're looking at now, we're to jump to different sections of it. And it can feel weird at first, but this is kind of, in a meaningful way, the same thing as this. So this, oh heck, I'm just highlighting these. This one that says, that's the display. That's how your browser is translating or interpreting the HTML you've written here. So to create an internal link, you assign a link's href attribute. So we set it in those parentheses to the hash symbol plus the value of an ID attribute for the element you want to internally link to. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? You say, what? This is the first time we're learning about IDs, I think. So let's just chill out for a second and take a look at what an ID means. Then you also need to add the same ID attribute to the element you're linking to. So really, and we're going to use this metaphor a couple of times. We're going to talk about the concept of a name tag when we come back to I'm time traveling in my head. When we come to CSS, we're going to be talking about the concept of sort of name badges or name tags. I've got my name tag here. Hello, my name is Go Away. It's a very, very, very polite name tag. Um, so when I say, hey, I want to jump, I want to set a link, I want to link to this ID. I want to, oh heck, I want to link to Go Away. I also have to go and put this name tag on my element. So when I'm using an ID as a link, I'm telling the browser, hey, this link, when you see it, I want you to jump to this element. You're going to look for an element with this name tag, this ID, and you're just going to jump and go hang out with it there. Here's an example. Oh, and we're gonna go ahead and copy and paste both of these because as web developers, already know um, you already know that developers love to copy and paste. You know what? I'm seeing a really fantastic question by Sachin. So, what's the difference between ID and class? And class is going to be a concept that we start to sort of grapple with in CSS. So, I just want to preview this very, very gently. And the difference between ID and class generally is that you'll usually only have one ID. So, that's going to be a unique name tag. So, maybe that's your first and last name. I'm Sachin Unicorn. There's probably only going to be one of you in the room. There's probably going to only be one of you on that web page. Whereas a class is a much, much larger concept that you can reapply. And we're going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit in CSS. I don't mean to delay you, and I don't mean to be like, oh, well, you'll understand when you're older. What I mean is, let's talk about this in a little bit more detail next week, just because I don't want to get everybody, what's a class? You don't need to know what a class is yet. Everything's fine. Let's learn about it next time. And Ekrol's got a really good question saying, hey, what happens if IDs are duplicated? And y'all absolutely know what I like to do with really good questions. Let's go ahead and come back to this question in a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate an ID and see what it does. I think my question would be, what do you think? Yeah, what do we think is going to happen if we duplicate it? We think that an ID is a unique name tag and it lets our browser link within the same page. What do we think is going to happen if there's two of them? And I confess, I don't know. I've never done this. But come on. So we've got our examples. Let's go ahead and squish this a little bit. Like, give me a little bit. Yeah. Is that all right? We can still see? So we've got a really good question. Someone's asking, hey, how long are we going to be streaming today? We're going to be streaming for about 2 hours, but if we run a little bit longer, I'm super fine with that. This video is going to be available later. Pop in and out, jump around to the things that you need best. It's really about what works best for you. I absolutely do not expect that y'all are going to put up with me for 2 hours straight. Oof, the humanity. So we've got our example here. It's not our assignment, but here we've created a link that says contacts. And this little ... is just the instructions here, just the example here saying, well, we think these two in a natural website, a norm web page, would be further down. So that ... is just like, hey, later on. So here where I say contacts header, this is a link. We think this is going to jump to contacts, but you know what? I think if this jumps to contacts, look how exciting that is. Let's go back. So as soon as we click this link, so I've copied and pasted this weirdly, haven't I? Nope, that's just how it wants to do. That's fine. We've got our anchor link, this hypertext reference, the ref, and we're sending it to the ID of contact header. All chill. And now we're going to say the anchor text here is contacts. Yeah. And down here, we've made an H2. We've made a second level heading. And we've created, and this gives us the syntax. This gives us the grammar that we expect. So now, having seen this, we know that to set an ID, we go inside the tag, We say the ID is equal to whatever we've called the ID. And I want to go ahead and give you a message from the future, just because I messed around with this a lot. One thing you want to be really careful with is spaces are not going to work in these IDs. So, yeah, these little dashes are going to save you. And we've had a really, really good question. So let's come back to that question. Where am I? Where is my egg roll? Thank you so much, my lovely. What happens if we use the same ID twice? We have already learned that copying and pasting is the best way to do. It's the laziest way to do anything. So now, and there's nothing wrong with being lazy and develop. There, at this stage, there's nothing wrong about being lazy. Proper, super senior developers, people who've been doing this for a million years, copy and paste. There's sometimes when with sort of some more complicated stuff where copying and pasting isn't always safe. So you can copy and paste maybe scripts that don't feel very safe, or maybe you're copying and pasting unsafe code. At this stage, everything's safe and fine. You're in a tutorial environment. Nothing's going to hurt you. So cat photo app. We've got contacts with the ID of contacts up here. And we've got contacts with the idea of contacts up here. All right. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen here. What do we think is going to happen? I'm gonna go ahead and highlight some. So we've got well, the website explode, and conceptually it well might. Oh, and Sasha, look at you, so chatty. You know what? I think it's going to go to the top one first because HTML is generally read by the browser top to bottom. Yeah. Dragon Rock is asking, do you get lazier as you get better? You know what? I couldn't tell you. I'm I'm not I wouldn't class myself as a better developer, but I do confess I get lazier every year. So we're gonna come all the way back up and we're just meditate on this, the structure of this while I push contacts. Oh, that's kind of hard to see because it looks like it's jumped to both, and I don't think that's what's happening. Let's take this one away, and let's move it all the way to the bottom. Let's put it way down here, down where main lives. Oh, down right before main ends. Ooh, what's the use of... Well, let's get to that question in just a second. So we've got contacts up here with the idea of contacts. And then way down here at the bottom, we've got contacts again. We don't know what's going to happen when we push this, but, oh, it jumps to the first one. Someone was absolutely right. Who was right? Oh, Sasha, you were absolutely right. I confess that I didn't know this, and you are right and correct and perfect. Everything is perfect. So we've got a really interesting question that's a little bit off topic. So like, hey, what does block quote do? And here it says black quote, but generally it's block quote. We can do that. Do you know what? That's a really, really good question. But I'm going to give you some homework instead of answering it for yourself. So the format I would use for that is block quote. I'd go ahead and try this yourself and say, hey, what does this do in a website? And I take a look at MDN and say, hey, what does the documentation for MDN say here? Yeah. I'm so sorry. Usually I'd be like, oh, but I definitely want to try and get through as much of this as possible. Block code is a really useful tool, but because I'm mean, I'm going to make you try it yourself. Okay. So we've experimented with this one, and we're going to just mercilessly, because we're mean. We're going to delete it all. Look at that. Look at that. And then we're going to delete this other example we made as well, because that's not our homework. And we're going to come down, and yep, we saw that when users clicked the contacts link, they were taken to the section of the web page that had the context header element that had that contacts ID. But we also saw if we had two IDs that were the same, it just went ahead and went to the top one. Yeah. So we're going to change the external link to an internal link by changing the href attribute to footer. So we're going to come, and then we're going to change the text from cat photos to jump to bottom. Then we've just got so many things. Look at all these different steps. This is too much. This is unnecessary. This is cruel. Then we're going to come down to where it says target blank, because that causes a link to open a new window. So here, it's giving us a little bit of a secret. It says, hey, if you wanted to make a link that opens in a new window, you add this target blank element. And they've added it for us. And you know what? We don't even want that. That's not our business. We're getting rid of this. The last thing we're going to do is add that ID element with a value of footer. So we're going to add ID equals quote footer unquote to, unsurprisingly, our footer element. We can do this. This is well doable. It says cat photos way up here. So the first, way up here. So here's our link that does cat photos. The first thing we're going to do is the only thing we love more than copying and pasting is deleting. We're going to delete the target for that existing link. And we're going to change it. Oh, do you know what I've forgotten? Does it still go in quotation marks? I think it does. Oh, heck, oh, gosh. I've the wrong button all over the place. Everything's fine, and everything's going to keep being fine. We probably don't want the pound sign. We probably want A. That's what we want. Oh, gosh, we don't want the pound sign. We want the pound sign. We want to change that to say footer. And here, just jumping around and trying to make your days more difficult. Yeah, so it is within a quotation mark. And then it says hashtag or pound sign or hash. And then the name of the ID. Oh, heck. Does HTML read from top to bottom, but CSS reads from bottom to top? If the last class declaration gets priority over others. So the first thing I'm going to say is most of the folks following along haven't done CSS yet. So if you don't understand the answer to this question, or you don't understand this question, everything's fine. Everything's super chill. I'm going to preview this because I think it might be useful, but this is going to make a ton of sense in just a moment. So HTML reads from top to bottom. CSS reads from top to bottom as well. But the last class declaration gets priority over others because that was the last thing you've said. So CSS is going to read through all. It is my understanding. Let's go ahead and get some CSS experts in a guest session. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what I think. And those of you who are good at CSS, go ahead and tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I think what's going on is that because CSS is saying, hey, here are the rules. Here's how I want you to render this. Your browser's reading all of your CSS and it's reading it top to bottom. So if you change your mind, so say, okay, the bananas class is pink. And then later on in your CSS file, you say, wait, the bananas class is yellow. Your browser's going to read all of that and say, well, let's make it pink. Wait, you said yellow. And behind the scenes, it's going to change its mind to yellow and give you yellow. Does that make sense? We'll go ahead and we'll get somebody really good at CSS to come and chat to you. This is sort of my general take, but I'm applying a very, very philosophical approach to CSS. And maybe it's a too classroom focus where I'm like, oh, you follow the most recent rule your teacher has told you. And that's how I often see CSS is setting out a list of rules, setting out some guidelines. So if those guidelines change, you're going to take the most recent one. Whereas HTML, think of HTML as much lazier. So say, hey, I want you to jump to the first time you see this. CSS doing a very good, very complete job. HTML just trying to get the job done. So, oh no, we've got folks who are excited for CSS. I'm excited that you're excited. I confess I'm terrible at it. So it's also going to be an exercise in me trying not to swear. So, where are we going? Where is my fragile human brain? So, we've done this first part, right? We've changed where our link is pointing to say footer now. And now it's not going to cat photos anymore. So it's asking me to change this to jump. Oh, heck, to, that's capitalized, is it? And the hardest thing in development is typing when someone else can see you. We're going to remove this text right here. We're going to remove where it says target blank. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that using our favorite thing in the world, the delete button. Technically, we can leave that extra space there. It doesn't hurt anybody, but we're very neat and tidy. We're very conscientious, eh? So, ref, footer, jump to bottom. We've removed target blank. We're going to add an ID element. And I'm so lazy and I'm so mean. I'm going to make y'all tell me where. And do you know what? If you want to be the absolute teacher's pet, can you type out what this tag would look like? Where am I going to put this ID? Yeah. Can you type out what this whole link would look like with the appropriate ID? While one of you is giving me the correct answer, Lucas is suggesting, hey, you know what? The more specific the target of CSS guideline, the higher priority, I guess. Do you know what? This is absolutely correct in my memory, that the specificity. So we'll talk about sort of prioritization in CSS, but CSS cares more about what you say about an ID than what you say about a class. So there's some sort of exciting inheritance rules. Sasha's saying, oh, heck, hey, is using target blank a best practice? And it's a best practice for when you want it to do a specific thing. If you want your link to open in a new window, you say, well, you know what? People on my web page, I want to point them at this other web page, but I don't want them to leave my web page. I'll open them a new window. So target blank is just a way to open a new window. I keep saying just a lot for very complex things. You must be patient with me, I beg. All right, my brilliant, beloved fellow learners, where am I going to put this ID if I want to add an ID to this link element? It's the worst thing about live streams, isn't it? Is y'all get just an endless amount of time of me saying, I refuse to do this. You must do it. And then me chuckling and drinking coffee. It's absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't stand for it. Oh, cool. Yeah. Yachts, you know what? You got some good ideas. I'm going to talk through this because I think you really, really get what's going on. So the anchor link is really, wait, where's my brain? What the anchor link is saying, hey, I'm going to send you somewhere else, but you're going to stay within the same web page. You're not going somewhere else on the web. I'm going to send you someplace else. But this hash sign is saying, we're going to stay on the same page. We know we're going to stay on the same page. Ref isn't necessarily saying there's an element called footer here, but it's saying that it expects there should be an ID that says footer. So where you're going to say jump to bottom, we're also going to make, yeah, you got it. So it's going to say, do you know what? This link is going to send you to an ID, to the first ID I can find. Best practices say it should only be the only ID on your page. But you totally got it. That, hey, instead of sending you to another web page, I'm going to look for this ID and I'm going to send you there. Monica, you are really, really good. So we say footer ID equals footer text footer. Perfect. That's exactly where we're putting that, down at the bottom. So Monica, I'm going to throw you back up on the screen in a second because you are way ahead of us. You are so good and so perfect here. We are going to come, oh heck, what is the difference between an internal link and an external link and somebody else? Egg roll, come on. I'm going to let my beautiful assistants put egg roll's comments up on there because egg roll's completely got it and this is completely right. While we're doing that, I'm going to come and do what Monica suggested. I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom. It's dizzying. I know scrolling like this is a crime. And Monica, yeah. So internal links, staying on the same web page. External link, anywhere out on the wild and dangerous web. Let's go ahead and get Monica back. Where have you gone, my lovely? Hey. So you've given us absolutely the right answer. So footer, haha, just letting me copy from you. I'm so lazy and I really appreciate it. The footer is equal to footer. And one thing that, yeah. So one thing that I didn't understand when I first started using this, I always thought, because this example, well, this is the footer, it's a footer element, and the ID is called footer. I immediately thought, oh, I can only do this for element names. And that's not true at all. If I wanted to call this ID, well, let's see what it does first. So jump to bottom. We think this should take us to the bottom, right? Ah, it takes us to this footer containing copyright cat photo app. But here, our element is called a footer and our ID is called a footer. It would be entirely, completely, absolutely reasonable to think I can only use IDs that have the element name. But let's add some deep chaos. Can somebody give me any random, non obscene word? Just give me a weird, silly word. And I'm going to go ahead and experiment with that weird, silly word. Don't worry, we'll change it back before we put it. We're still going to pass this lesson. But give me a weird word and we'll go ahead and test whether or not pancakes, rap, kitty ipsum. Do you know what? Y'all are just all over the place. Pancakes, rap. So kitty ipsum, what would be an additional challenge between using these two words as an ID? Yeah? Yeah. Oh, RIP has a special meaning. Guacamole. So remember, words with a space, we need to have that hyphen in the middle. Oh, do you know? I asked for something weird. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one because it's nice and weird. So here we're going to say jump to the ID. Hang on, I'm going to leave this on screen because I need to be able to type BALLLOON 1, 2, 3, 4. For those of you who are non-native speakers, this is just a real stretched out version of the word balloons. Think of an excited child yelling. So I'm going to copy and paste this because there's no way I'm going to spell this right twice. I'm going to come all the way down. What do we think is going to happen? I've now set our link to find the ID balloons. And y'all are just making me act like a goofball. And we've set the ID down here to balloons. Do we think this is going to work? Even though it's not an ID of footer. Yeah? How are we feeling about this? We feel confident? We feel like I'm just a goofball? Ah, it still works. Everything is fine. Everything's going to continue to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up to kind of a weird, kind of a philosophical question. If we know that we can set an ID to almost anything, it doesn't have to be the name of the element. Why? Why did we want to set the ID to say footer? What was the recommendation? Why might it be the best idea to set the ID to the element name. And I'm going to let one of you or many of you, like it's not a raise your hand kind of thing, yell at me if you can think of, why would free code camp and why might I, as a developer out there in the big wild, wild world, why might I want to set the ID of the footer element to say footer? Beautiful egg roll. You are just the absolute teacher's pet. To improve, it makes it more understandable for humans. It's going to be so rare that you're building websites. Oh, do you, Sasha? I I confess that I love teaching just because I love to compliment people who are smarter than me. Y'all absolutely have this. I won't call you the teacher's pet. Sorry. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This is such an exciting question. Is it Key? Kai? I'm dreadful with names and I have so little context. What if I want to set an ID to a new element, not a paragraph or a heading, but by itself? So what if I want to set an ID to a blank element, maybe? Something that's not shown on your screen? Yeah. I'd go ahead and I'd probably use a div in this case. And a div is sort of like an empty box. You can put stuff in the box, and you obviously want to put stuff in the box. And it doesn't have to just be div. So footer is an example here. If our footer didn't say cat photo app, if this was empty, this would be sort of a visually blank element, and it would still work. It would still jump to the bottom. Oh gosh, what did that say a second ago? What is the shortcut for undo? Is it Control Z? It's Command Z. I'm rubbish. Oh, DeWall makes such a good point. If you don't want a line break, you could set an ID to span. See, this is why I try and get people smarter than me on this. I am gently, oh so gently confident that if we run the tests, we're going to be free. We keep going. Everything's fine. So we're going to put an anchor element inside a paragraph. Right now, our link says cat photos here, and that's weird, right? Like, that just feels weird. Let's go ahead and put it inside our text. So you can nest links within other text elements. Here is an example. And we love to copy paste our examples, don't we? So, paragraph, here's a, woo, who remembers what this target blank is going to do? Shout at me if you remember. Here's a anchor tag, target blank, hypertext reference. Oh, perfect. It's going to open a new page. And then we've got the text, link to www.freecodecamp.org. Then the link stops for you to follow. And then we're going to close our paragraph because we are so responsible. We keep our paragraphs separate. Y'all are all on top of this. And here's what that looks like in practice. So here's A, mirrors the paragraph, here's A. And then link to freecodecamp.org. This is all of the anchor text. And this might feel a little weird. And you say, Jess, can you have a URL? Can you have a web address as part of a link? Heck yeah. You know what? To make it more complicated, you can also have, what do you think would happen if I put a web address as, what do you think would happen? Or are there any targets than blank actually? I have no idea. Give me just as, oh, can I ask one of my fabulous helpers to grab the MDN for target? I've only seen blank used in the wild, but I'm not really sure if there's other options here. So I don't have the answer for you. I'm not going to have but we'll go ahead and get the MDN, the documentation that'll tell you the answer. But what do you think is going to happen if I put a link here? If I HTTPS Oh, let's do classcentral.com. You say, Jess, what's going on with this? Why isn't this a link? Why can't I click this? Why won't it send me somewhere? And that's because it's not a link. So this is a URL. This is a web address, but we haven't wrapped it in an anchor tag. So it's not going to take our user anywhere. Let's go ahead and mercilessly and heartlessly, we're going to delete this whole example. Yeah. Monstrous. So we're going to come all the way down. And this is sort of letting us know exactly what we've talked over, that like, hey, when you end the anchor tag, you end the linkiness of a link. Very technical terms here, right? The clickability of a link. And I recommend reading over this on your own. So getting a little bit more familiar with, why does the link start here? Why does the link stop here? So we're going to start this. We're going to nest. And nest means we're going to wrap things around this. We're going to nest this link within a paragraph. I think we're going to start a paragraph tag here. Yeah. And those of you who are very, very good at things, what do we do when we start a paragraph tag? Go ahead and we'll end that paragraph. We don't know what this paragraph is going to say yet, but we know if we've stopped it. Wait, hang on. We know if we've started it, we got to stop it. We've got this. Yeah. So we've got opening paragraph, closing paragraph. What do you want me to say here? View more cat photos. Ooh, this feels like a word problem in school, doesn't it? So view more cat photos, but cat photos is a link and the rest of it is plain text. So view more, not a link. Cat photos, totally a link. Y'all think we can do this? I think we can do this. Everything is super chill. So we are going to come in here, and I have confessed that I'm very, very lazy. I am going to add the least amount of stuff I need to add. I know that view more is text, and text should live inside the paragraph tag, but I also know that it's not a link. So it shouldn't live within this anchor tag. I gently but confidently think that I can just write view more. That technically works. It says view more, and it's not a link. And it says cat photos, and it is a link. But that looks a little like, that looks a little janky, right? That doesn't look right. Can y'all let me know, why does this look a little wrong? What's wrong with this? Like, it'll probably pass. It's probably technically correct. What are my requirements here? Woof, woof. There's a lot of requirements here. So, but let me know what's wrong with this. Why does view more cat photos look weird? And what would I have to do to fix that? While I'm getting you to troubleshoot for me, we're going to go through the rest of this and see what else it says. We should only have one link. Yeah. I think we've space. Cool. You're absolutely correct. We don't have a space here and it looks weird. Where can I put my space? Can I put a space here? We know that the way we address these is by testing to see if we can do weird stuff. I could put a space before the link in it totally. Can I put a space in the link? What do we think? What would it look like if I put a space in the link? Ooh, and that was so subtle. So I'm going to zoom. Don't get dizzy. I'm going to zoom way in. Well, wow, too close. So, yeah. The difference I want to show you is the difference between putting the space before your anchor text And putting it in your anchor text is just that you get this little additional line that your link covers the space. There's no I don't think there's any official rules with it. I'm going to zoom back out just because I like for us to be dizzy and to feel a little bad. I just think having the space not be a link feels a little better to me. I can't explain it, but I think we've fulfilled our requirements. Did it want us to have a period after the Oh, come on. I'm just trying to make y'all as dizzy as possible. View more cat photos. It hasn't told us to add a full stop. My heart cries for a full stop. But oh, Pat is saying, oh, hey, that's what makes those lines before the text. Oh, Angel asks a really fantastic question here. What would be the best practice? And best practice here is just sort of the what makes the most sense, what's commonly accepted. And I don't think I've seen any discussion around best practices for should the space be part of your link. I just think it looks a little weird. Here, you know what I'm saying this, and I bet there's like very, very finely tuned discourse. I don't think anybody's going to come and get you. I don't think anybody's going to fuss at you. The best practice my heart sings for is to have that space without a link, but that might just be me being a weirdo. Yeah. So whenever you're not sure about best practices, go ahead and web search for, yeah, really, we're just going for aesthetics here. I don't think that it's going to make it much more challenging for your users if that little space is a link. Um, it pulls gently at my heart. We're also going to get to some designers and also going to get some artists to come and talk to you all. We're going to run these tests. Oh, and actually, were many of you around for the Wednesday session? We can drop a link to that. So we had Barbara Oakley and Zach Caceres come and talk to us about the neuroscience behind learning to program. Oh, so yeah. And that was really about, hey, how can you learn better? We'll be getting some other folks. So this Wednesday, we're going to have Bruce Lawson, he's good at everything. It's frustrating. He's he helped write the HTML5 spec. So he helped write the rules behind modern HTML. He wrote a big fancy book about HTML. And he's gonna come and sort of talk to us about the philosophy of the web. And who doesn't like philosophy? So let's talk about murder. We are going to murder a link. And like everybody's had a stressful week getting to like rah, but just to links. We're going to make a dead link using a hash symbol. And you say, hey, sometimes you want to add a link to your website before you know where that's going to go. So it's very menacing to hop on a stream and say, hey, let's talk about HTML and murder. So we learned about lorem ipsum. So this sort of placeholder text. So when you're building a website, but you don't know where, you don't know what the content is going to be yet, you can make a link that goes nowhere with the exact same thing. So your boss or your boss's boss. Oh, we've got a really good question about guest sessions. I really want to answer this real fast. So are all guest sessions going to be Wednesdays at the same time? And to make your life more chaotic, I'm so sorry that they're not. We're really conscious that a lot of you are joining us from different places around the world. To make things a little bit more fair, but a little bit more chaotic, we're asking our guests on Wednesdays to join us at whatever time works best for them. Oftentimes, so both last week and this week, that's going to be sort of in the early morning, North and South America. And then in the evening, the early evening, sort of Europe time. Whereas on the 8th, we're going to have Miguel join us to talk about, he's so smart and so interesting. So on the 8th, Miguel is going to join us, and he's going to be joining us significantly earlier. He's going to be joining us sort of a nice, chill mid-morning for the Americas. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put those at all different times just to try and make it as fair as possible. As fair as possible to the learners and as unfair as possible to the team because yeah, let's make it a little chaotic. Let's make some of us wake up early. So, lorem ipsum when you don't know what a paragraph is going to say and a dead link when you don't know where a link is going to go. So, this is also handy. This is preview. So, sometimes when you don't know where your link is going to go, you make a dead link. Or if you're going to change the behavior of a link using JavaScript. This sounds super advanced, but you know when you're a kid and you're in school and your teacher says, well, here's the grammar rules or here's the science rules. And then you get a year or two down the line and your teacher says, oh, yeah, well, that rule you learned, it's not really true. Here's what's really happening. And that kind of abstraction makes it a lot easier to learn foundational material, but it also teaches you not to trust. If you say, oh, you know what, a Spanish verb is always conjugated in one of these ways. And then you get to sort of Spanish 4 and they're like, here's your regular verbs. Have a good day. Oh gosh, 6 a.m. in Buenos Aires. That's too early to be getting up, my love. I promise we are going to have some much friendlier guest time zones for some upcoming guests. I'm so sorry. Oh heck, sorry, I'm allergic. I've got to start doing this when window is closed. So we've learned about the rules of HTML and what it does. JavaScript is sort of like, if we're looking at an alignment chart, JavaScript is chaotic neutral. We can do unexpected, challenging, confusing, beautiful, terrifying things with JavaScript, but we're not going to be touching JavaScript at all this course. So if I was your 5th grade teacher, what I'm doing is I'm lying to you through abstraction now and saying, okay, here are the rules. Here's what HTML does. Here's our expected behavior. But I'm previewing to say, well, when you get a little bit further, JavaScript will make a lot of these rules different. So right now, our link points to free cat photo app. You know what? That's absolutely true. No one is lying to us. We're going to replace the ref attribute with the hash symbol to create a dead link. I think this is going to feel, oh heck, what am I doing? I think this is going to feel immensely satisfying. So we could delete this, or I'm going to shift and is it 3? Is it 3? Yes. What do we think is going to happen when I click this link? So we've made this link a dead link, right? But it still says click here to view more cat photos. Oh, somebody is telling me that they were in 5th grade back in 2004. I absolutely feel you. I feel you with feeling old. And I was just about to be like, ha ha ha, I was in 5th grade and it's far enough back where I can't really properly do the math. We're all old together, my lovely. Yeah. The inexorable march of time. None of us can stop it. So I'm going to ask you, because I just keep coming back to this coffee, what is going to happen when I click this dead link? I should have saved this for Halloween. Dead links are appropriately spooky, aren't they? Where's that going to take me? Say target blank. I think what's going to happen is this is going to, what do you think? Oh, I make terrible coffee. Oh, somebody's suggesting a 404 error. Maybe it's going to refresh the page, which is a really good point. So, and it's difficult because I don't think this is going to properly show. Eggroll suggests maybe we're just going to stay in the page. So it does still say target blank here. So maybe, Eggroll, you are absolutely after my own heart. You tried. And this is exactly what I want. So, hey, what would this do? Just try it. I'm not going to tell you there's no cops on the internet, but there's no learning cops on this internet. Nobody's going to come and get you and yell at you if you experiment. Try it. So here, we think that if we click this, yeah. Oh, oh. So I've just got, and it's strange because it's not fully displaying this for all you all, so I'm going to describe the strange behavior to you. For me, it did open another window because I've said target blank, but it just opened another window on this exact same page. It sent me where I was. Yeah. So replace the ref attribute to create a dead link. Let's check what our tests are. You know what? It's just saying, hey, make me a dead link. I think if we push run all tests, it's happy with that. Yeah. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for. Yes. I promised you ages back, which means a week ago. I said, hey, we're going to talk about links. And here we're talking about anchor text, the text that displays, but it doesn't have to be text. And this is what I've been waiting for. I don't want to say my whole life, but definitely the past 7 days. We are going to turn a link into an image. And some of you have already covered this part. Oh, Nico has the sweetest thing. I love the humanization of this link. Oh, a dead link makes me feel like the link was alive in the past. And this really isn't the case. Yeah. Azura is asking a really good question. So what's supposed to be the outcome here? So I think the outcome is that it does open a new page, but instead of sending us someplace new, it says, well, here's where you already were. Here's a new, I want to send you nowhere. This is a dead link. I'm not sending you anywhere, but you've also asked me to open a new window. So I'm going to open a new window and send you nowhere. And when I take those two logical concepts together, and web development doesn't always feel logical, but if I told you, hi, I want you to take me on a trip in your car, but I don't want to go anywhere new. I want to wind up exactly where I started. You might have me hop in your car and sort of drive around the block and come back to where we were. And that's sort of effectively what we've done here. We say, hey, I want you to open a new window. Don't take me anywhere new. And our browser's like, well, that's weird. But yeah, to do that, to sort of drive around the block, we're going to just open this and send you to where you already were. That's sort of my general feeling of it, but I'm wrong all the time, so I'd experiment a couple times. I'm going to turn an image into a link. So let's get an example. These examples are really hard to see on the stream, so let's just copy and paste that. And we're going to bring this one down under our existing image. Does that feel all right? Hey! And notice we don't have any break here between the two of these. We've just got cats and then cats again. Ooh, and this image is bigger. Oh, kittens, my heart. So, any of you cat owners, or are any of you aspiring cat owners? Let's look at what's going on here. We've got our anchor tag starting. So, okay, the anchor tag should be on the outside. It should be the sort of parent element here. And then the child element that sits inside. So we've got a ref. And I know y'all can tell me where this link goes. What's going on with this link? It's dead. And then where we would usually see the anchor text, instead, we're starting an image element. We're starting an image tag here. We say, okay, starting an image. And the source is bit.ly FCC running cats. So this is where I want you to go. I want a 4-month-old kitten on my lap. I'm well jealous. Perfect point. So I'm so sorry, my love. It's the hardest thing about pets, isn't it? Is that you just love them forever. And sometimes that feels like a little piece of heartbreak you get to carry with you. So we've got an image. The source is this URL right here. That's where this image is on the web. And we remembered from last time that you absolutely must all the time, unless it's a purely decorative image, have alt text. Yell at me, scream at me. Um, oh, how do you know if the link has been updated in the image? So the easiest way to know if your image is a link is to go ahead and hover over it with your mouse and say, hey, I sorry, if this is very small. If y'all can see a little tiny arrow cursor here when I'm hovering over the ginger kitten. But if I come down to these running kittens, I get sort of a clickable link. And these will look different based on your browser and based on your system. But yeah, I get the sort of screen indication that this is clickable now. Can you all go ahead and yell at me? Why must you add an alt text? And not just because I told you to. What are the other very good reasons to have alt text? And while you all are yelling at me, I'm going to say the alt text here is 3 kittens running towards the camera. Yeah, yeah. Let's go ahead and come all the way down. And here's that question we just got asked. How do we know it's a link? Well, your cursor's normal pointer should become the link clicking pointer. This photo's a link now. Yeah, look at you. Accessibility. People using assistive technology need that alt text to conceptually see your image. Search engines need it to know what your image is about. Also, I will yell at you. So let's gonna take, oh, do you know what? Are you after my own heart? It's best practice. It's just sort of the right thing to do, the polite thing to do. We're gonna take this example we put in and we're going to mercilessly destroy it. Look at that. We we just sent those kids away. We're rubbish. We're so scary. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our existing image. We're gonna take this cute ginger kitty and we're gonna turn it into a link. So this is gonna feel weird, right? Woof, woof, oof. I don't like that. I'm gonna have an opening tag in front of my just for a second. That's an anchor. It's an anchor. Yeah, yeah. And we've got our ref. Where to close that? This feels weird. This feels weird. Ooh, that's another good way. If the image just doesn't upload, if your server is like, ha ha ha, I'm not giving, then it'll still show your users. Hey, I meant to put an image here. Here's what it was gonna be. Yeah. So look at this deep chaos. Look at this deep chaos. We're seeing everything turned into a link because we told our browser to start a link and we just didn't tell it to stop. Let's tell it to stop. We say, hey, link just needs to be here, just needs to be the image. You don't need to do the whole thing. Let's be cool. Yeah, everything's cool. So our existing image element should be nested within an anchor element. Here's the start of our anchor element. Here's the close of our anchor element. I feel gently confident that that's, and do you know what? Our third test says, hey, your anchor element should be closed. And we've just done that. We've just closed it. We're going to remember back to lessons, say, well, our link should go to nowhere. It should be a dead link. And we've just learned, shift 3, we've just learned that hash sign, that pound, is gonna create that. So, and I know this is so tiny, I couldn't think of a way to make my cursor bigger. If you see I've got an arrow, I've still got an arrow, I got my little pointy hand. Little, I'm not gonna say, yeah, I'm not gonna say this is terribly easy to see, but it's all right. I now know this is a link. And this link is not gonna go anywhere. How frustrating. Because it's a dead link. I'm gonna come all the way up to run all tests, and I am very gently confident that it's going to give us that little ba-ba, that little serotonin bust. Everything continues to be fine. Ooh, I love this. I find these so exciting. We are going to make lists. So we've learned a little bit about paragraphs. We learned a little bit about this. And what we're going to do here is we're going to learn a little bit more about how to format text. Yeah. Now we're at 50% of the way through. Amazing. Ah, we might not finish all of the HTML today, and that's okay. If we don't get through all of this together in the stream, I'm going to gently and lovingly and not aggressively, I'm going to encourage you all to finish it on your own. We'll get through as much as we can, but we're not necessarily going to cover every single lesson together. Um, so I'm so sorry. I'm not going to answer this question in great detail. CSS is something you need to know, and Bootstrap is sort of a framework, a way to import and quickly use CSS and Bootstrap or CSS and HTML. We're going to learn about radio buttons. We're going to learn about all this stuff. So we're going to create an bulleted unordered list. And HTML has a special element for created unordered lists. And if we're going to create unordered lists, I bet money that later on we're gonna have something that says ordered lists, right? So let's move a little bit quickly through these. It might feel weird. We're going to move a little bit quickly just because we've had somebody suggest that we'd really like to cover radio buttons because they feel weird. And I respect that. Yeah. Monica, I got you. We're going to try and hurry through that. And you know what? The 2-hour mark is arbitrary. I'm going to of course understand if my lovely colleagues want to drop off after 2 hours or really before then. They're patient as heck. But we can go ahead and keep going through this together. So here's what an unordered list looks like. And anytime we get an example and we want to see what it feels like, then copy and paste that example. It is, as advertised, a list. It is not ordered, so not numbered. And each list item, each little bulleted item, is on a separate line. Oh, heck. And so we open our unordered list and we close on our unordered list, but we also open and we close each list item. Yeah. I'm going to move a little bit quickly through this one because I rarely see people get stuck on this. So we're going to remove the last 2 paragraphs. Oh, wow. We're going to get rid of all of our text. And I'm so sorry. I'm going to crowdsource this. Please tell me things cats love. And while you're telling me things cats love, I'm going to create the framework of where this is going to go. Yarn. Oh, you know what? That's super lovely. And before I write yarn, oh, heck. Wrong. I've already created my ordered list, opened and closed it. Here's a list item. And because we're very, very careful, we're going to close our list item before we actually put it. Oh, look at these. I've got yarn. Oh, catnip. Oh, no, wait. Don't make me say catnip while trying to write these catnip. Another list item. Lasers. I like how terrifying this hypothetical cat is, where it's like, hi. Oh, cats love you. Oh, my little heart. I confess I've just taken the first 3. And now we see we've got this unordered list we've got an open and closed list item, an open and closed list, and we've got these 3 pop bullet points. I'm going to run the tests. Everything's going to feel fantastic. I bet imaginary internet money. Everything is fine, and everything's going to continue to be fine. We just said, hey, here's an unordered list. Let's go ahead and look at an ordered list. Just like anytime we get an example, we love to copy and paste. So let's copy and paste our example. An ordered list is going to give us some numbers, some order, some structure to the whole heckin' thing. So, okay, let's look at our syntax here. Unordered list, ordered list, they both open in kind of the same way. This feels chill. Unordered list. Oh, so would an IDE, would a coding environment automatically close those for us? And really, so an IDE is a way to write code, and it depends. Some of those do have the features where when you open a closable tag, it automatically closes it for you, and some don't. So it's nice to get into the habit of closing them, but a lot of sort of developer tools will magically do this for you behind the scenes. And this is sort of the opposite of what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying, hey, sometimes when you're learning things, your teacher will abstract things away. They'll simplify this. And here, cruelly and unkindly, we're doing the opposite to say, well, oftentimes in the real world, the tools you use are going to close these tags for you. But that's not always true. So we're going to get you in the habit of doing these out of habit. Yeah. Oh, we've got a fantastic question from Adiola. It's a beautiful name. I'm terribly jealous. Asking, is it advisable for a newbie to copy and paste? It's fantastic to copy and paste. I'm not a newbie. I'm a million years old. I'm older than dust. And I still copy and paste all the time. Especially in HTML, there's almost nothing that you can do that will there's almost nothing dangerous you can do with copying and pasting in HTML. There's some edge cases where it might be a terrible idea, especially around forms, but especially while you're learning, and especially in a tutorial environment like this, please copy and paste. I mean, type it out too. Do everything, experiment, get weird. So I'm going to take this example and I'm going to banish it. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down and say, please tell me the things cats hate the most. What are things cats hate? And while you're doing that, I think feels reasonably common sense that they're going to want this ordered list here. And I'm going to start our ordered list. Wow. You go ahead and tell me what cats hate. Yeah. So we've got our exact same as for an unordered list. We've got our list items. I'm going to go ahead and I know there's going to be 3 of these. So while you all are telling me what cats hate, I'm going to go ahead and do all of these list item tags. Oh, we've got water. They hate dogs. Oh, sometimes you see them get along okay with dogs, but I respect that. Lemons. I mean, I believe you. What? Lemons? Like, look, egg roll has never been wrong yet, and they're just like so smart and so interesting. So I'm gonna go with it. Like, cats hate lemons. I was unfamiliar with this. I'm gonna. Wait, we got somebody saying cucumbers as well. It turns out I do not know cats at all. I'm going to run all these tests. It's going to give us that beautiful, you are wonderful feedback. We are wonderful. Everything's chill. Now, we've been doing stuff that feels real mellow, right? So, we're going to do stuff that's a little bit harder. This stuff feels a little bit more complex. So, we're going to start learning about forms. Forms is a way for you to take input from your users. If you want your user to tell you their name, or if you want them to tell you um, what things their cats hate, these are really interesting ways to do this. Oh, so the difference between code editors and IDE. I'm so sorry that's going to be a little bit out of scope for right now. If it's not terribly unkind, could I get you to ask this question or maybe even start a thread about code editors and IDEs over in the course forum? It's a really good question. We've got somebody else asking, so hey, what's the best text editor? What's the best editor? And we've got a couple questions about text editors. It's a little bit outside of the scope of the lesson, so go ahead and throw those in the forum, and we'll answer those when we get a second. I'm so sorry to say, woof, we won't answer that. But I want to make sure we get through forms, just because these are super weird. I'm still bad at them. So input elements are a way that your users can add things, can send you things. And this is going to be a little bit complex because we're going to learn the syntax for how to create forms, but really, forms to work and to work properly, they need to be connected to a database or connected to a service. So right now, we're going to learn to create forms, but it's sort of your user trying to send you something, and we haven't yet learned how you can catch that information in a really effective way. So I wanna go ahead and flag that this is an abstraction. There are additional complexities behind forms, um, and we're not gonna learn them quite yet. This is something where we can go ahead and get deeper into it in the forums. We can go ahead and maybe do an optional session where we talk about connecting your website to different things. But unfortunately, right now we're going to abstract a little bit, and that feels a little unfair. So you can create a text input like this. You say, I'm starting an element, starting a tag. It's an input element, and the type is text. What do we do with all of our examples? We copy and paste those. Oh, dag. Look at this. It has given me a text box. What happens? What do y'all think happens when I put something in this text box? Nothing. Nothing happens when I put something in this text box. This text box doesn't really do anything yet. That's chill. I'm chill with that. We're way ahead of me. Not a heckin' thing. So we already learned about self-closing tags. We're like, hey, you must always close your tags unless they're self-closing. And input tags are self-closing. So like the image tag, you don't need to say, oh, I'm done with that input. It just magically does it. You say, oh, Jess, why? And because life is chaotic and strange. And because this is the way the HTML spec was developed. Put the blame on someone else. We will. So we're waiting to get this scheduled. So I'll let you know about the time soon. We are going to have a guest speaker come and talk to us about web standards. So how HTML gets made, how CSS gets made, how these decisions are made. So we're going to have it's somebody who I think is absolutely brilliant, but we'll share more information about that soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an input element of the type texts below our lists. We come down here, and we've just learned it's input. The type is equal to text. And it's self-closing, so that's perfect. So till now, Sasha's got a really good question here and saying, you know what? So far, we've only learned 2 self-closing tags, image and input. Are there any more self-closing tags? Yep. So we'll learn a couple more in this course, but there's going to be more and there's some of them that don't exist anymore. Hold on, Monica, you're asking me a question that I'm having a conceptually challenged one. Is it possible to wrap a caption with an image that's also a link? Monica, are you asking me if I can have an image with text under it where all of it is part of the same link? Because yes, to do that, hang on, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Let's say to do that, just add text. So go ahead and if you continue to add elements within this, if you continue to add content within the same anchor element, it'll continue to make it part of the link. So we've said, coming way back to our assignments. Oh, so where the image is a link, but the caption isn't. So yes, that is possible. And here we've done it just as text, but later on we can go ahead and look at like how to create sort of set captions. So do some styling to make that look a bit more like captions. I'm going to come way down. Yep, you got it. Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to be like, well, we can learn that later, but you're absolutely perfect. You're a gift. So we've got our input type. It's equal to text. I think we can, and oh heck, let's actually see what that looks like. And we've got our text box here. Oh, we've got a really fantastic question. I'll go ahead and put this up. Hey, how do we define this? Right now, it's just a blank box. How does our user know what should go in the... I promise we're going to learn this in just a second. This is such a good question. I really appreciate it. So we're going to run these tests. Everything is fine. We're going to head on to the next challenge. How might our users know what to put here? We're going to add placeholder text to a text field. And let's go ahead, because I'm lazy. You all, of course, aren't lazy. You all are very, very good. You're very responsible. But because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy and paste our example here to look at it. So input type text, okay, is just a blank text box. But here, we've got text with a placeholder text. And we can see copying and pasting our example that the text shows up in the box. It's a little bit faint. It's a little bit rubbish. But if I wanted to change this text, so we see input type equals text. So far, both of these examples are the exact same, yeah? But then we've got this extra argument here. Placeholder is equal to, this is placeholder text. But I think we can put anything we want here. I say la, 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 la. Cool. I feel okay with these examples. I'm gonna mercilessly sweep them away. We're gonna come all the way down and say, well, y'all have gone ahead and made this input here. And what it's asking us to do here is to say, we're going to create a placeholder. Oh, heck. Equal to. And this placeholder should say cat photo. Oh, heck. Cat photo URL. I think, can we put text in the middle of an image? You can do that with either image editing or CSS. But I think you probably shouldn't. It's going to be really distracting. You can have, yes, usually with CSS. I probably wouldn't do it because I think it'll be distracting. So we see that it says cat photo URL. We've got our placeholder attribute. I think we can run all our tests and everything feels just fine. And keep in mind, we're not going to do all of these together in real time. I don't think we're going to have the time, but let's get through as much of this as we can. We'll go ahead and we'll hop onto the forums. If you get stuck on anything we don't cover, we can do that. Yeah, we can sort that out. Everything is big and scary and weird, but also super fun. So we've created a text input, but we're going to create a web form that submits data to a server just using pure HTML. And this is a little bit challenging because we haven't really talked about what servers are. I'm going to be chatting to somebody later today about maybe getting a speaker who wants to talk to us about how browsers work, what's actually being served to you. But right now, servers are going to have to say a little bit conceptually mysterious. Servers are, yeah. So web pages can have a background image with text on top. So that can be with CSS, but oftentimes that's just with plain old HTML. It sounds weird, but this will get to be feeling more and more familiar just with more experimentation. So think of servers as other computers, so computers that live somewhere else, that that hold your web page, or that hold your user data, or that hold your images for your website. And they serve them either to your users or back to you. And we've sort of got a little bit of a conceptualization around servers when we talk about when you write HTML, you're going to save it as an HTML file and you're going to give it to a web host, which is really a server, which is really a special computer. And that computer is going to serve that HTML file to your users. When a user comes to your website and they say, I know what you want. You want this HTML file. As a server, of course, I would be delighted to give that to you. And that's when stuff goes right. Sometimes stuff goes wrong and you get an error. That's for another day. Servers can also take data. So here when we're talking about forms, we're saying, hey, we're going to build a form element. And I'm going to copy and paste this example because we're using a little bit of an abstraction here. And here we're going to say, hey, this is the URL, this is the web address of where the form data should go. And this is really saying, hey, where does your server live on the web? Give me the URL of the computer or the server. Give me the URL of who is going to take this form data from your user. You say, Jess, this doesn't make any sense. And I said, no, it's okay if this doesn't make sense yet. We could talk about this in the forums. We can go ahead and try and find some videos explaining how this works. And I'll see if we can't get a guest here to sort of talk to us a little bit more about how does, like what actually happens under the hood when you ask for a web page. And here we've got form. And this element's new, the action. And the process is, you know what? Usually these little tooltips are helpful, but this is adding more confusion. I'm going to take her away. Here, it's the action is equal to who, like where on the web, I want this information to go. Who's going to take it? We're going to come all the way down. And then we're going to say the input. And this input doesn't do anything yet. If we look at our other input, we say input type text. Here we just know that this form will have an input. We haven't set it yet. And then we're going to close the form. And this is going to feel weird. And it's okay if this feels weird. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to come down and let's see if we can't do this in a way where the syntax at least feels a little bit less weird. Yeah? So here, I'm being asked to nest, to wrap our input element in a form. And I'm going to assign the form action to freecatphotoapp.com/submitcatphoto. So this is the URL. This is the web address that's going to be handling getting the data and giving it to our server. If you don't understand what this feels like yet, that's chill. We're just going to get the muscle memory. We're just going to get the syntax now. The understanding will come in time. And it's a very mean old lady thing to say, like, whoa, don't worry about it. It'll make sense when you're older. But yeah, it'll feel weird. We'll work it out together. I promise. So we're going to create a form element. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to open and close this. We say form. We know that inputs are self-closing, but here we can see that form is not self-closing. That's all right. We say form. And we know that our form wants to have an action. And that's what URL is going to handle the user data for us. Here, the URL that's going to handle our user data is freecatphotoapp.com, submit cat photo. And I'm not going to type that whole fool thing out. I am just going to copy and paste it. Ooh. Do you see that? Our webpage had to very briefly say, wait. I need a moment. I need to load this form. And I sort of need to do some stuff under the hood. I'm just going to go ahead and reload and make this make sense. I know this feels weird still, but let's just look at what it's asked us to do. So say the existing input element should be nested within the form element. So we've got a form element. Here's our existing input element. Yeah. That form should have an action attribute. I got it right here. And that action attribute should be equals to, it should be set to freeCatPhotoApp.com, submit cat. This gives us a little bit of a hint about what we would want our users to do. Our form element should be well formed. It's a bit of a pun, isn't it? With opening and closing form tags. Our form opens here, our form closes here. I feel like this is going to be okay. Sorry. Oh, this is a really, really good point. And this is only relevant if you've got spare money. Don't you dare spend money you don't have. So FreeCodeCamp is a completely separate entity to this bootcamp. This bootcamp is being run by the good people at Class Central and me sort of as just a happy weirdo. But the people who are supplying the charity that's supplying the content FreeCodeCamp, they're a registered charity. They get by based on donations. So if you've got $5, please go ahead and give them $5. But if you don't have the money, if you're not working or if you're under, don't you spend money you don't have. Hey. Oh, here's a really good question. Why aren't we using this? Ooh. Oh, I love this. So this is such a good question. You can use the slash before the URL if it's Sasha, I can explain this really briefly, but to make it make sense, we have to talk a lot about file structures. And we're not going to talk a lot about file structures. So I'm going to answer this in a slightly unsatisfying way. Let's say hypothetically that the website we're on, let's come here. Let's say hypothetically that we're on and I'm not, yeah. Oh, we're on, let's say we're working on classcentral.com. Yeah, let's say we're working on classcentral.com. That's the web page we're working on. If I want to add a link or a URL, if I want to use a URL that's part of the Class Central domain, that's part of our file structure. If I want to link to https www.classcentral.com /submit photo, I can go ahead and use shorthand. So here, going back, the example we saw before had that slash before it. And that's because if we're on the same web page. So here, the form action is hypothetically, we're building the Class Central website, but the form action is going to freecatphotoapp.com. So if this was being submitted to classcentral.com, submit cat photo, we could go ahead and delete all of this because we know we're navigating to a sub URL. We're navigating to a part, an additional argument on a URL of the website we're already at. So if we're on classcentral.com, we're going to classcentral.com /submit cat photo. We can just say submit cat photo. Like they're like, hey, we're going to the same place here. There's no reason to write the same URL. You can if you want to. It doesn't hurt anything. That's just an option. Yeah. Ooh, that's such a good question. And this is really abstract, Monica. Monica's asking here. Oh, sorry, we're both clicking at the same time. Do actions always reference links? So when we're talking about links here, I want to distinguish between links and URLs. And do you know what? I've just completely blanked on what URL stands for. That's very embarrassing. I've heard these all the time. That's Uniform Resource Locator. And that really means a web address. And it gets even more complicated because there's sort of the IP address, which is a bunch of numbers, versus these word addresses like freecatphotoapp.com or classcentral.com. So do actions always reference links? I want us to be really careful to distinguish between URLs, which are these web addresses, which have the format of links, don't they? And an anchor tagged link. So it is possible to have an action that doesn't. I think actions will always involve a URL. But I'm ready to be wrong. Can I ask my beautiful assistant to go ahead and grab the MDN for form actions, the action argument for forms? Oh, God. Y'all are making me lazy. Kuya makes a fantastic point. So the action is pointing to URI, and the href points to a URL. This is technically correct, and you're absolutely right. Lovingly, I am not going to go into the difference between a URI, a uniform. Yep. Right now, we're just going to talk about these in the colloquial sort of web address, but we can go into these in a bit more detail in the forum if that's okay, if that's not lazy. I'm always lazy. I want to make sure that we get through these just because we had somebody asking about radio buttons. We're going to a little bit tight on time. I was laughing because everybody's being nice and complimenting each other, and it just warms my gray, evil little heart. So we're going to add a submit button because right now, if I say, ha, 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 ha. Oh, I mean, they cheated a little bit. So that does technically work, but I'm going to have to go back and reload this. But we're going to add a submit button to our form. So buttons are elements. Buttons are elements. Everything's fine. We're going to come all the way down and we're going to create a button. We've got a form element here that surrounds, that wraps our input type. I think I'm going to put our button inside our form. Does that feel right? Like usually when you see a submit, it's right below the text field, right? We've got a couple really good questions. Let's go ahead and look at these for a second. Hold on. Everybody be chill. Be chill. Be chill. Sashin first is asking, so we use the slash to navigate to URLs which are within the same domain, the same web address, the same sort of file structure. And yeah, I think that's fair. Everything's chill. Actions are for buttons. Anchors are just for URLs. I think I need to sit with this question in order, there's nothing wrong with the way you're asking this. I think I would want to sort of have a minute to think about how to best explain this. Can you go ahead and we'll start, I'm being so bossy to my beloved colleagues. Beloved colleagues, can you go ahead and start a week 2 questions or a week 2 questions and issues thread in the forum? And I'm just going to have y'all start chucking those in there when it's something that's too smart and too good. Y'all are so patient and so good. We've got a question saying, hey, are we finishing HTML? We might not get through all of the HTML lessons together in the stream. And that's going to be okay. I do encourage you to go ahead and complete these on your own, and you can come into the forums and get support anytime. So we'll get through as much as we can. I want to get through at least the radio buttons because we were asked about that. But it's really likely that there'll be a couple little lessons that I'm going to lovingly encourage y'all to finish on your own if that feels okay. Cool. It's really my fault for waffling in 9 different directions about how clever you all are. We're going to come up and we see that buttons, we're going to add a button as the last element of our form. We get this. So here's a form element. but the last element of our form, the last element within our form. So here, our input is an element that exists within our form. It is a child element to our form element. I think that if I want to create another element that's our last element, that is the child of the form element, I'm going to go ahead and put it right under where my input type is closed. So I'm going to say button. Yeah. And we see that a button here is not self-closing. We need to go ahead and say starting a button. I'm going to finish a button. I'm going to close this. Just best practice. Hey, that button looks weird, doesn't it? It's just a little gray, little baby. We've got some folks suggesting a Discord channel. There is an unofficial Discord channel that's been linked to in the forum. That's not run by the team and that's not moderated by the team. So we're not actively going to promote that. The challenge really is that we're really, really keen about effective moderation. So we'd love to do a properly moderated Discord. That's really going to have to wait until a little bit later in the course, just because we want to make sure that we've got our moderation processes down. Yeah. So there is an unofficial one. It exists, but it is an at your own risk kind of thing. We're going to wait. It is something we'd really like to do on our own, but you all know me by now. I'm such a weirdo about like learner safety and code of conduct. Oh, these are the basics. I really want to make sure that we're offering learners the best experience. And I want to go ahead and make sure we're taking care of you on stream and on the forums before we go ahead and do something as complex and as challenging as a Discord. We've got folks asking, well, when might that happen? I'm so sorry that I don't have a date for you on that. So that's when we've got our feet under us and yeah, it may well be that it's not until, and I'm not promising a next cohort. It may be that that's something that we if we do this again in January that we look at then. So there are no promises. I'm promising you nothing but disappointment, which is really what I bring you every week, isn't it? But this is something we're exploring. We'd love to do, but just really want to make sure that we've got the moderation. Hold on. We're gonna add a button as the oh no, y'all. I do confess, like your time is so valuable. I really am seeing this cohort and I am seeing our time together as a bit of an experiment. And that's so bold of me to say I'm experimenting with your time. I really want to make sure that we're giving you all the best support we can and the best support we can, considering that we've got thousands of you out there. So please, the thing, I don't want your money. I don't want your help. I want you to be nice to the other learners. Really, the only thing I'd like to beg you for is please give me good feedback. Please give me, be mean, be entitled. Give me feedback about what we could do. Oh no, gosh, be mean to me, not the learners. You must be nice to your compatriots, but please be as direct as you like about what could make this program or these lessons work better for you. We're not going to be able to give everyone everything that works best for them, but even if it's something we can't do now, and even if it's something we can't do at all, I'm always so excited to see what serves learners better. And sometimes you're gonna like give me really thoughtful feedback, and I'll be like, "That's amazing." I can't do that, and I'm so sorry. I hope that doesn't feel like a waste of your time. Eyes on the screen. We're gonna add a button, the last element of our form, with the type of submit, and the submit is its text. We're gonna come all the way back up and we're gonna look at our syntax here. Button, type equals submit. So button, type. Oh heck. The type is equal. See, you had me like talking about learner feedback and trying not to cry because y'all are too sweet and I'm just completely rubbish now. So submit. For non-native speakers, I'm really conscious that it's challenging to join a course in your second or your third, some of you your fourth language. I'm terribly impressed. And I hope it's not too weird to be learning with somebody who uses Britishisms and American Southernisms at the same time. I confess I've moved around a lot, so I just sound like a weirdo. The button type is submit. Yes. How do we add text? Oh, you know what? Let's copy and paste this example, yeah? And we're to do it outside our form, which is probably not best practice. Let's come back. Here we've got a button type, submit, the button type, submit. And it says this button submits the form. And the text on the button, this feels a little bit like a link, doesn't it? It's sort of, we're not going to call it anchor text because I don't think it's called the anchor text, but sort of the anchor text of the button, right? So instead of putting submit right there, I think if we want this button to say submit, I think we're going to want to put it between the open and close button tags, just like we've got here. When I start typing, I bet that the preview is going to jump right back up. Yeah. It's just our browser having to reload. It's like you're doing something weird. I just need a minute. I'll be back. So, cat photo URL. Here we've got a button. The button type is submit. It says submit. We're going to get rid of this very helpful example. We think we can push go. And this is just going to, it's going to say like 4% because I've had to reload. So don't get disheartened if it, oh, I don't even know how incognito mode works anymore. Tanya, this is such a good question. So we looked at this last stream. And if we just write text without it being inside any tag, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make you. I'm not the boss of you. I'm going to encourage you when you've got good questions like this, just do it. So, hey, can I just write text? What'll it do? Just go ahead and say, can I just write text? Great. Oh, here, and it just shows up. Here, your browser kind of assumes that you meant a paragraph tag, right? Yeah, such a good question. I really appreciate this. So far we've got an optional field here. We could push submit and our form will say, thank you for this empty submit. Thank you for nothing. But we can make sure it will say, hey, you cannot push submit until you give me something here by using the required attribute. And I want to talk really briefly about attributes. Attributes are these like extra little features. They're accessories of a sort that we attach to an element. So here, the alt, that's our alt attribute, even though we know that it's not really optional. It's not an accessory. You must add alt text or else I will be very disappointed. So here, we're going to make our input for our form a required field so that our user can't submit the form without completing it. So, form action. Here we've got type. It looks like here we've got input type equals type. It looks like we could just throw the word required in here. Yeah, we could just say, I declare, I add the attribute of required. I'm telling you that this is required. Input type text. Here, I'm just going to say required. I spelled that right. Yeah. Now it's saying, try and push submit. Now that this is required. I love this little like, ba-bum. So that's the one supplied by the browser saying, nah, absolutely not. This has to be required. Isa, you're asking a question about the definition list. I'm so sorry. I don't really understand this question. Can you ask it in a different way? And I'll see if so try asking it in a different way here, but also go ahead and bring that to, go ahead and bring that to the forums if we don't get a chance to answer that. Oh, Azur, you are after my own heart. You're doing weird experimentation, and I love that. So if you put the required before the placeholder, hey, it works. If you put placeholder and then required, still work. And I think that's usually true. So we've got some different attributes, some different or say arguments if we wanted to. We've got some different where these attributes that this is the placeholder and this is an attribute required. We can put those in different orders and we're fine. Everything's fine. Yeah. Sashin, look at you after my own heart. So types in programming languages can be, those are a complicated thing we're not really going to touch on right now. But input is type is an attribute, required is an attribute, and placeholder is an attribute. You are perfect and brilliant and complete. Oh, so we're talking about, Kai's pointing out that we're talking about ordered list, unordered list, and definition lists. There are 3 types and definitions not as common. So we'll go ahead and we'll link you to the MDN for that, but we're probably not going to cover that as part of this course. You really rarely see those on the web. They look really cool when you do them. And those are just sort of a formatted list that that are often used for sort of dictionary definitions. But yeah, we're not going to cover them as part of this course. We can go ahead and drop the MDN for you. We're not going to cover all of HTML. I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry. I don't want to cover all of HTML. So we've made that required. We're going to run our tests. Everything continues to be. I'm just trying to, I know we're over time. This is where I wanted to get you. So we had specific questions about that. Sasha's saying, if I can explain that again. So attributes, yeah. Attributes are really like the accessories, the extra features we're connecting to our elements. So when we look at, I'm going to come all the way down. When we look at, and here, all of our attributes are helpfully colored bright, bright red. So here, type is an attribute. So this is one of the features, one of the extra requests we're attaching to our input element. So we say, hey, I want an input element. I want to add a type. And you're probably always going to have a type when you have an input element, but you might not have a placeholder. This is an optional attribute and requires an option. So these attributes, you can have as many or as few as you like, but some of them, like the type, you're almost always going to have just because it would be weird to not have them. So we're going to create a set of radio buttons because we had someone asking about these, and because I was terrible with these when I learned them. I was so mad, I was swearing, I was tipping things over, and you all are going to be better than I am. So radio buttons are a type of input, and when we put them on the page, you will have seen them before. Each of our radio buttons can be nested within its own label element. By wrapping an input element within a label element, it's going to automatically associate it with that label. You say, Jess, what? Think about a label element in a lot of the same ways as an ID. A label is just like a little name tag. Say, hey, here's a radio button for this question or for this section of questions. And here's the label. Here's sort of it's not an ID, so I don't want to mix it. But here's the name tag of what that means. Yeah. So we've got a bunch of really good questions. I'm going to go ahead and get through this first, and then I'm going to come back to these really good questions, if that's not terribly rude. All related radio buttons should have the same name attribute to create a radio button group. This is a lot. I totally get why y'all wanted some help on this. So radio buttons are the individual buttons, the ones related to the same group. So different options from the same question should share the same name attribute. And then by creating a label element, we know when the user sends us our data, we know what that means. Let's go ahead and create one of these. Here's just a radio button. So this is not going to give us enough context. Oh, heck. Look at this. Look at this. Very unsatisfying single option. We do indeed have a radio button. But it only says indoor. But let's look at what this means. Yeah. Yeah, you find name, and we've got Mustafa. What an absolutely majestic name. I wouldn't wear it well, but how beautiful and glorious. Uh, Mustafa saying, I find name and ID and label to be very confusing. I absolutely feel you, babe. They are confusing. You are right. They are confusing. Um, and unfortunately, it sounds like a cop out, isn't it? Where it's like, well, the more you use them, the more comfortable they'll feel. But I'm so sorry that a lot of the things we're going to be learning now are, hey, the more you use these, the less weird they're going to feel. And you're absolutely going to get frustrated sometimes. And this is going to, it's just going to suck sometimes. And that's why you're able to call yourselves a web developer. That's a lot of what web development's all about. So here, allergic to everything. Yeah. Here we've got our input, and that feels a lot like up here where we've got our text input type text. Here we've got input type radio. Yeah. The name is indoor outdoor. And this means that this suggests that maybe this would be a question, or maybe this would be a group about indoor or outdoor. And from the context of our project, I'm going to guess cats. So the name indoor outdoor is going to be shared amongst all of the other radio buttons in the same question, the same group, the same topic. But we haven't put a label. And let's go ahead and add a label. Just a label is equal to, and we could say, you know what, this label could be indoor if we wanted, but we could also be inside. And that means that when my user selects this and sends it back to me, the information I'm going to get as the website owner will say, hey, for the group indoor outdoor, the user selected the radio button with the label inside, or indoor if you prefer that. It is considered best practice to set a for attribute on the label element with a value that matches the value of the ID element. Woof. Right? This is too much. So you should also add a for attribute on the label element that matches the value of the ID, because it makes it easier for people using assistive technologies. Let's look at their example. And sorry, it's just me. Whoever was asking, please cover radio buttons. You are not wrong. You're not alone. You're not silly. Oh, you know what? Yacht is asking a perfect question here, and I really, really love this. And saying, so when it says add to the form, does that mean inside of the form element? You are absolutely perfectly and completely correct. I confess that I'm experimenting with these outside the form element because I'm bad. Um, also because I just want to look at the syntax right now. Let's go ahead and do this right, because you've pointed out that doing it wrong is it's not best practice, is it? So here we've got our input ID is equal to indoor. Yeah. So that input ID should be unique. We should only have one indoor button. Actually, think they're going to feel better? Yeah. So this break just gave us sort of an enter. So the input ID is indoor. We should only have one ID that says indoor. Yeah. Here we've got the type radio. This is a radio button. This is not a text input. And the name of the group, the name of the question really is usually what the name of the question is indoor outdoor. And then, because we want everybody to be able to use this, we've created a label for indoor, and this says indoor label. And this label is really saying, hey, users with assistive technology, here's something that's not really going to be apparently visible for many of your users on the on the page. But this is going to make it so folks using assistive technology say, hey, this says indoor. This is what's going on here. We can also nest the input type within label elements. And that's just going to be a little bit different format. This is going to be the exact same button. I'm going to mercilessly say label for indoor. And then we've created our label. Say, hey, this is going to let assistive technologies know what's going on. And then we've put our radio button inside that. That's all chill. That's doable. There's no rules. There's lots of rules. We're going to create a pair of radio buttons on our form. Each of it's going to be nested with its own label element. One of them should say indoor. One of them should have the option of indoor. And one of them should have the option of outdoor. And they should both share the name attribute of indoor outdoor to create a radio group. We've got a really, really good question to say, hey, is it lit? When we've got a bunch of different attributes for an element, such as type or ID or class or value, is there an ideal order to write them down in to make things easier for us? And I love this question because this is a style question. So some projects have orders they like this to be in, and some teams they have orders they like this to be in. But I'd encourage you to get in the habit of doing them in the same order. Yeah. So with a lot of these attributes, it doesn't always matter, but for your own happiness, for your own future happiness, do them in the same order. So say, okay, I always do the label first, or I always do the ID first. Yeah. Oh, so Monica's asking, is this label we're using as a wrapper to help with assisted tag? Yeah. So this is making this more accessible. I love this. And Yada's asking, what are you doing? Can I not have like a shortcut with an order? I'm so sorry, my love. No. But when we do talk about shortcuts, do you know what? While I'm doing this, Eggroll has made Eggroll's actually reteaching this for me, so we're going to put that up. While we do not have a shortcut for magically turning an unordered list into radio, we would love that, wouldn't it? What we do have the shortcut of is our assignment right here. So it says, hey, make a pair of radio buttons, each nested within a label element. One should have the option, so that the display text of indoor, and one should have the option of outdoor. Both should have the same indoor-outdoor attribute. And I bet you money you're going to see what I mean by a shortcut because the example they've given us here, that passes our test. Look at this. Nested within label. Label. We're done. Yeah. One should have the option of indoor. Like I'm seeing indoor here. They should both have the name attribute, indoor, outdoor. Yeah. They've done half of this for us. And what do we like to do even almost as much as we like to copy and paste, is to copy. So here, we're going to copy this exact same format. We know that we want to wrap this in a label because we want people using assistive technologies to be able to see it. And this is a label for, is this a label for indoor? So it says one of these should be indoor. We've already got that one done. One of these should be outdoor. I feel gently, cautiously confident that we can do this. So up here, we've got label for indoor. Down here, we got label for outdoor. Yeah. I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to copy my syntax. I'm going to copy the exact same computer grammar. Input. And do you know what? If you have to look these up all the time, you are not alone. I consistently have to look these up. I'm unashamedly rubbish at forms. So our input ID, the input ID up here is indoor. I feel like it's probably outdoor for this one. Yeah, we feel all right. This one. Ooh, what's going on here? Yeah. Yeah. What's the for attribute related? Well, let's do that in just a second. Yeah. We'll definitely be doing more of this in the forums. I promise. This is super weird. We'll like forums are weird and miserable, and we will definitely be talking a lot about these in the forums. Everything's fine. I mean, everything's terrible, but in a very, very manageable way. What's happened here is a default. Remember how when we learned I can add text? When I add text without an element, it just defaults. It assumes I mean a paragraph. And here, when I add when I add an input element with no attribute, when I don't say what type it is, it just assumes I want a text element. It defaults to text. And we don't want text. We want the type, your radio button. And when we come all the way down, that's going to have turned our extra box, our extra text box, into another radio button. That's chill. Yeah. So, yeah, we're going to learn more about forms in the accessibility section, I bet. But we're definitely going to continue to go, like, just because you're going to do more of this on your own and just because it's hard doesn't mean that you're abandoned. Don't forget that you can always come to get help right here within FreeCodeCamp, and they've got help. But also, come over to the forums. We're always ready to help. But let's go ahead and continue to do the rest of this one. And I'm so sorry that I'm going to say goodbye to you all after this. It's cruel, so unkind. I'm making you do the rest on your own. I know. Really, that's going to be the best feedback is, well, I mean, maybe Jess should be less mean. And Yacht is helpfully pointing out that we're about 80% of the way done. So I am cruelly and monstrously making you do 20% of this all on your own. How mean. If you want to keep up, I'd love to see folks getting all the way done with HTML before the next section. Because when we come back next week, we're going to be starting it on CSS, and that's going to feel a lot smoother if you've finished all of the hardest HTML bits on your own. What a mean teacher. Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I'm gonna finish this. Why different IDs? So these aren't like IDs in CSS. I mean, they are a little bit, but IDs should almost all. I think IDs should always be unique. There should always only be one of each, and that's because the ID for this one that's saying, "Hey, this is the indoor button." And let's go ahead and let's finish this element. Um, let's. So the name is for what question this is, or what topic, what group, indoor, outdoor. Oh, heck. That's just a leftover from my example. And here, the label is outdoor. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. I'll get to these questions in just a second. And then we're going to close our label element. What we've got here is we want to make sure syntax matches. Label for indoor, for outdoor, input ID indoor, input ID outdoor. Yeah. These are both radio buttons. The type being radio feels real steady. And these are both questions in the same group. So this is part of the indoor outdoor group, and this one is too. All right. This one's going to say indoor, and that one's going to say outdoor. And our label tags are closed in both. So why different IDs? Wouldn't they likely? So these aren't referencing a CSS style. So these are referencing the individual radio button level choices. So if I select indoor and I submit, the information it's going to send back to the server is say, hey, for the name, so for the group or for the question, indoor, outdoor, this user selected indoor. And that's sort of how we get our information back. So these IDs feel really different from CSS IDs, and that's going to be really natural. Oh, heck. Do we need a value here to pass? Let's run all tests and see. Oh, sorry, that's a very squeaky sound for like, "Whoa, I passed." And I think that maybe the two most relatable web development feelings are, "Oh, this doesn't work and I don't know why," or, "Ooh, much scarier. This works and I don't know why." We're just gonna preview the next challenge. I'm so sorry we're not gonna work on it together. Woof. It's saying, "Please donate." I promise I already donate to them. It's saying, "Please donate," because this is the class one I use. So, on your own, I'm gonna ask you to start to explore checkboxes. Checkboxes are gonna feel like a lot of the syntax from radio buttons, which are gonna be super, super stressed. Oh, so this one's really good. I'm definitely gonna answer this question before we go. So, how do we associate a question caption with a radio button group? And we can go ahead and do that by saying, because right now it says it's just the buttons. It's indoor, outdoor. That's weird, right? I can add extra things within this form element. I'm going to add just some plain old text. I think, is your cat an indoor or an outdoor cat? I think if we come down, and this is just going to display the text for these questions. The questions associated with this. So how do I know what question was asked? That's what this name is about. So indoor, outdoor is sort of the code name for our user-facing question here. Does that make sense? If I wanted to, I could put all of this, is your cat an indoor or outdoor, in here as the name, but it would be a weird. And this might be a good question for our last question. Will the submit button submit if we use it out of the Sorry, it's not a bad question. I just sort of had to emotionally process this. I don't know. All right, come on, DuckDuckGo. So this is will a submit button work outside a form element? And here, I think it'll know that we mean HTML, but so you can ask the weirdest questions, and chances are, because this is such a weird question, somebody else has probably already used it. Well, yeah, fine cookies. Can I use a submit button outside of a form tag? Cool. Cool. We've got a bunch of people saying, "Hey, how can I do this?" Oh, heck, let's make this bigger. And Stack Overflow isn't perfect. Like, these are just people answering questions. And people here are saying, "I think you need JavaScript." Somebody else saying, "I think you need JavaScript." Ooh. And somebody's saying, "Well, here's an answer." The string specifying the form element in which the input, that is the form owner, must attach the ID. Oh, platypus. So reading this, it may be technically possible, but it is, yeah, you shouldn't do it. And platypus is saying this in a much better way. You can use buttons as links if you really want to. It's not best practice. And that's answering a separate question we had earlier, which is a very, very good question. But it's bad. So it's not best practice. I wouldn't do it. It looks like HTML. My understanding from having glanced at this for 10 seconds is that it is designed not to work or not to work well. It may be technically possible to make this work, but my understanding is you shouldn't do it. So please don't use a submit button outside of a form tag, just because that's not how HTML is structured. It'll be weird. But do you know what? if you're able to make this might be a really good question to bring Bruce. Fab. We are going to go ahead and wrap up for the day. I know that we've still got about 20% of the HTML stuff to do. I'm going to really, really kindly and really, really gently ask you to go ahead and finish this on your own. So go ahead and see if you can't get all the way through the HTML section. We've got a couple more really good questions. I'm going to lovingly and gently send you to the forums if that's not too cruel. I'm going to have to head off. I've been keeping the team late. You all are absolute gifts. Gifts, not gifts. Well, you can be gifts as well if you want to be. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I'm so sorry that we haven't been able to answer every single question. And I'm even more sorry we're not able to get through every bit of HTML. The stream tomorrow is going to be the exact same content, so you're not missing anything. And if you're able to, go ahead and hop onto the forum and ask any questions you might have, and we'll be really happy to answer them. Please, please, please have the easiest possible day and the easiest possible start to your week. I'll let you go. Bye.